Hello, my name is Fenna. Welcome to Following Fenna. I am a certified coach and counselor, and I work with people in a limerent episode and also with their partner. Now, this is going to be a long, big video because I want to explain it all. Everything that I collected from the last years of being in a limerent episode and also working as a trauma therapist and also working with people in limerence. I have to do this video in cuts, otherwise it's going to be too long. So if you see any inconsistency in, light, that's normal. Okay, let me just adjust the camera here. Okay. How to deal with limerence. And of course, well, not of course, but we know by now that limerence is the obsessive infatuation with another human being in a painful and most of the time fruitless relating that consists of hope and obstacles. And in this video, I will address and tell you exactly how we get rid of limerence, what to do, what to expect, and how to handle that. So let's jump right in. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about limerence, but nowadays there's also a lot of good advice out there. But now, like I said, I want to address everything, the whole aspect of getting rid of limerence. And also, very important, not become limerent again. We're also going to talk about prevention in this video. Okay, so you got tangled up in a limerent episode, which means there are obstacles and hope in the relationship, in the relating. You, for what reason, cannot form a what I call healthy, secure relationship pair bond with this person in a way that your nervous system feels calm and connected and safe. We can say quite the opposite if you think that limerence is a byproduct of an unsafe bond. If you are in limerence, then you became addicted to this other person, and we call this person the limerent object, or sometimes we call them LO. Now, due to the intermittent rewards that can be contact with this person, intermittent reward causes repetition of behavior in mammals / addiction. Now, I've made videos, I think over 200 videos by now, viewing on all aspects of limerence, the hormonal side of it, the addiction cycles, etc. Now, okay, you are limerent and it hurts. It hurts like hell and you want out. Now, the reason why I don't make so many videos on how to stay calm and how to calm down and regulate your nervous system in limerence, and how we can try to regulate during limerence, is because I don't want you to endure limerence. I don't want to enable, and I don't want you to accept or trying to stay in this connection in limerence. I am here to give you the best and the most healthy advice, and that is you need to detach. You need to go no contact in order to stable and regulate your hormones and your system again, and this way you can calm down also your nervous system. That's also what I mean with system. That way you break the addiction. But also we have to grieve the person And grief is a process that helps you to adjust from the old, painful, stressful situation, and I mean the limerence, to the new situation, which will be calm and more peaceful if you are no longer in the limerent fog. Now, unfortunately, that is not so easily done. I mean, I can say, oh yeah, go no contact. You say, okay, well done, I'm fine the next day. Grief hurts. Detaching from someone we were attached to hurts. Beating an addiction hurts. It's painful. But it's still the fastest way out. Now, how limerence should be dealt with are on 3 areas, and I will address them later. I will first name them and I will address them later in detail. First, we have the addiction in the here and the now. We became addicted. So when we cut our addiction, we go through withdrawal and also through the grief. That's what we have to deal with. Second, we have the circumstances prior to the beginning of the limerent episode. That can be non-fulfillment, suppressed needs, boredom, life events, losing someone, not having a purposeful life, prior up to, let's say, up to 2 years before the limerence began, because these aspects open the door for limerence. And number 3, we have the vulnerability for limerence, and that stems from attachment wounds. Can be our own attachment wounds, can be inherited. So there are 3 areas, and they are super important to address. Not 1, not 2, but all 3. It's also important to know how to prevent limerence. I mean, we don't want to go from one episode to the next, right? So I'll also address that. Now, the 3 areas play a crucial role in the development of a limerent episode. Like I said, we have the vulnerability, the circumstances, and the circumstances open the door, and then we have the addiction that follows if we meet the wrong person. No, our limerent object is not our right person, it's the wrong person, and we cannot form a relationship with them, a relationship that fulfills our needs, meaning that there are obstacles and there is limited access to the other, there's unpredictableness in the contact, or the emotional attunement / resonance is off. And what I mean by that is that the quality and the quantity, the frequency of the contact does not calm your nervous system. Now, why we need this emotional attunement is that has to do with attachment. It has to do with our brain, and our brain always wants to predict the contact that we have with important others. And I've also made videos about that. Now, I'm going to start at the bottom. What should you do when you have the vulnerability for limerence? And maybe you found out later in life, or in my case, I think I had my first limerent episode when I was 7. Now, I know that Dr. L, in my opinion, he is the master in limerence, the neuroscientist who created the wonderful website, by the way, Living with Limerence. I know that he doesn't agree with me. But I agree. Well, at least he didn't, let's say 5 years ago. I don't know how he thinks about this now, and I don't know if he adjusted his opinion, but I agree with me. I am also a trauma therapist. I give schema therapy, And I have worked with hundreds and maybe even thousands of people in the last 25 years with trauma, and also with limerent people. And I mean, every single limerent person I have spoken to describes either their own trauma, having their own trauma, or inherited trauma, which creates attachment wounds. And with attachment wounds, I don't mean that we cannot get attached, and I'll explain some of that later on. Trauma can be inherited. Now, the example I always give is I have had a happy childhood. There was not really significant trauma there. But my grandmother was narcissistic, which means that she must have had severe trauma. People don't just become narcissistic. Those are pretty traumatized people in general. She didn't do the healing work, that's for sure, and not worked through trauma can be inherited. And a beautiful book about that is called It Didn't Start With You, and it's written by Mark Whalen, and it describes really well how inherited trauma works up back to 3 generations back. Now, in my case, I didn't even know that I had inherited trauma. I thought I was fine until I hit a limerent episode, also due to the circumstances, and everything was not fine. I felt so much pain, anxiousness, and agony that I had to admit this cannot just be about hello, whom I have seen 8 times. This is so big and this is so profound. This is so much bigger than one person. So I had to have a look. Okay, what's going on here? So having an honest look in your past and see that there are maybe still things that you need to work through. And perhaps you've already had therapy, but maybe not the kind of therapy that really focus a little bit on attachment. And maybe you need to do some more therapy. The one that does focus a little bit more on attachment wounds. Well, like I said, when I talk about attachment wounds, I don't mean an attachment disorder, and I don't mean that we are people who cannot attach, that we have problems in attachment in all areas. Because most of us don't. Most of us, well, we obviously can get attached, otherwise we wouldn't be in limerence. But sometimes we also have healthy attachments. For example, with friends, with kids, with our parents even. And some of us also have had healthy relationships or secure relationships. I've had secure relationships when the circumstances were different. I also know people who go from one limerent episode to another, and they are exhausted. And of course, they ask me, please teach me how to prevent this, because I want to have a normal relationship. Okay, well, I suggest, therapy to break the cycle if you go from one limerent episode to another. But having a look at your past, having a look at your needs that maybe were not met due to circumstances in your surrounding, having a look at your childhood, or having a look at your parents' childhood, that can be a wise thing to do in our healing work. Doing healing work is what we should do with our vulnerability. I know that there are not many, and that's kind of an understatement, therapists out there who are familiar with the term limerence. But most of therapists, most of them are familiar with the concept of attachment and trauma. So you don't really need a therapist that exactly knows what limerence is, but I would suggest a psychotherapist. Because just doing cognitive assignments, okay, this is what I think, why is it wrong? Okay, now I know that what I think is wrong, will help a bit. But my experience is you need to kind of go back to your inner wounded child to heal some old attachment wounds. And by just thinking about, okay, just doing cognitive behavioral assignments will not come to the inner wounded child. So that's how we should approach the vulnerability. Have a deep look in what's been going on. Are there some things that I still need to work through? Schema therapy is a good form of therapy and dealing with your inner wounded child, but I'm sure there are many forms of therapy that you can benefit from. Now, important, be careful not just to take on any kind of diagnosis based on the symptoms. Because being in limerence means that you resemble a lot of DSM-5 diagnoses. We look like someone with borderline based on the symptoms. Since we have very low self-esteem in limerence, we question our identity in limerence, we have mood swings, we are afraid of being abandoned, and these are all symptoms of a borderline personality disorder. But if you actually have borderline, you should have had these symptoms before the beginning of the limerence. Same goes for OCD. During limerence, we have OCD thinking. Doesn't mean that outside the episode you have OCD. Goes for bipolar disorder. Goes for being a love addict. You should have had the symptoms before and after the limerent episode. On Living with Limerence that I was referring to earlier, there is this excellent free guide that you can download and bring to a therapist. And in the guide, and it's not 50 pages thick, it's actually really easy to read, there is written what limerence is and is not. It's an addiction, it's not per se any kind of other diagnosis. Because treating limerence on just the symptoms will not make the limerence go away. Healing old wounds, looking at the circumstances, invest in your life, and going through the withdrawal and going through a profound grief process will make the limerence go away. So again, healing old wounds, turn every stone is something that you might want to do. Number 2, what else is important in getting rid of limerence and not becoming limerent again? I'm talking about the three-way approach. Okay, number 2 is to have a look at the circumstances prior to the beginning of limerence. There's a lot of information there actually. I would say up to 2 years before the beginning of the limerent episode. Unfulfillment opens the door to limerence. So we already have the vulnerability stemming from our childhood, and then the circumstances play also a crucial role. We need these ingredients for a limerent episode to form. What was going on before the limerent episode began? Were there suppressed needs? Were there unexpressed emotions? Did you lose someone? Were you still grieving? Did you miss sexual contact? Was there boredom? Like I said, sexual needs. did you go through a life event? What was the gateway to limerence? If we open the door to limerence and we meet the wrong person who has attachment wounds themselves, and all, let's say 90% of LOs do, and we cannot be with them, then we have all the toxic ingredients for limerence. Now, Dr. L, I mentioned him before, states that having a purposeful life protects you and heals you from limerence. Now, I give a slightly different approach to that. I call it living in integrity, and having your needs met will heal and will prevent you from limerence. Now, having a look at your life, you can of course do that on your own, but also maybe with a life coach. Doesn't have to be a therapist, maybe with a coach. What was missing in your life, and how can you bring that more into your life? Do you need to work on your marriage? Do you need to have a difficult but maybe really needed, required talk with your partner about your marriage? What's lacking? Did you lack connection with your partner? Do you want more friends? Were you bored? Do you need to have a new hobby, for example? Or do you want to take on a project? This is about you and your needs. This has nothing to do with the other person. They just show you how great you can feel. They're just an object to bring stuff to the surface. Thank you, hello. I'm not going to stick around. I don't need you anymore. But thank you for all the insights. Bye. Some people do decide to have a divorce. Not to be with your LO. Please don't decide this because you think you're going to be happy with a LO for the rest of your life. You're not. But maybe you weren't happy in your marriage for a long time. Maybe you want to change your job. Okay, again, what I'm trying to say is have a look at what you can do to level up the quality of your life, and being in integrity, following your values, or maybe change your values, establish your values, is very important. Needs are not negotiable. You cannot suppress your needs. They will always come to the surface. So again, have a look at what you really want and what is not there. Then we're going to approach the last one. We're going to have a talk about detaching, which also needs to be done in order to get rid of limerence. Just going to therapy and have a look at your needs and the circumstances will not be enough. You need to go through the withdrawal and the grief. And we're going to buckle up because, in my opinion, that's a bumpy ride, but also the healthiest choice that you're probably ever going to make in your life. Here we are in limerence, and we want it to stop. We want out of this prison, this quicksand. So we need to detach. We need to be proactive, and we decide that this freak show has to come to an end, and we claim our sanity back. And if you are still in contact, there are several ways, of course, to stop the contact. And of course, it depends on so many things, depending on what kind of relationship with what you have with your limerent object, of course. And if necessary, you can disclose, ask them also to step away, but you can also ask for clarity if you didn't already have that. For example, just ask, hey, what do you want from me? Do you want to have a relationship with me or not? And if not, then here today it ends. You can also decide just to back off and vanish. And I think you have every right in the protection of your sanity and yourself to vanish if that is what it takes. They will be fine. I also advise people to send the healthy goodbye text if that is appropriate. And of course, you know, you're not going to do that to a colleague who has no idea that you are in limerence. But if you're tangled up in something more toxic, the healthy goodbye text is honest and true. And there you write what you're about to do, which is not contact them anymore. And you also ask them to not contact you anymore. There is no Romeo and Juliet bullshit here. It's short, simple, and clear. For example, something like, hey, I noticed that this contact is absolutely not healthy for me, so now I'm going to stop it and I'm not going to contact you anymore, and I'm asking you not to contact me anymore, and I wish you all the best. That's an example of a healthy goodbye text. Now, of course, you can make any kind of variation. If you are dealing with a more narcissistic person or a toxic person, of course, you can also put them on block if they won't leave you alone. Plan a date if you want. Plan an exit date. Do this with a friend or with your therapist, a counselor, whatever. Write the healthy goodbye text if you want to do that. Decide to stop. You can also do that right now. Put the video on pause and tell, hello, I'm going to stop, and put them on block. It doesn't really matter how you do it, as long that you do it. Because regretting how you did it is going to happen anyway. That's a part of grief. That's a natural result in grief. So stopping the contact is crucial. And I don't care how, as long as you do it. Now, if you decide that, you can expect two things: withdrawal and grief. Now, the withdrawal might take a couple of days, up to 2 weeks. The grief is in general longer, and it might even last a few years, which is normal, by the way. Don't freak out, because you will not feel excruciating pain for 24 hours for years. Now, be prepared that bringing your dysregulated and addicted hormones back in balance, forcing them back in balance, takes a lot of work. And going through withdrawal is painful. I've made several videos on how to deal with the withdrawal, but it's also extremely healthy. You can make a withdrawal plan. Take some time off if you can. Don't plan anything really important in the days after that you decide to go no contact. And like I said, the actual withdrawal lasts a few days, where your body will protest. For some people that was relatively mild. I was rolling on the floor. It wasn't mild at all. But it has to be done. Now, if you decide to go no contact, to cut the contact, hooray, by the way, super healthy, good decision. You also will probably enter grief. And grief, oh man, grief also comes with protest of your body and your mind, manipulation of your mind, biases, regrets, shame, low self-esteem, confusion, being suicidal, triggers, doubts, pain, emptiness, depression, anger, self-hatred, boredom, and a whole lot of longing. But grief needs to be done. It's a natural process. It's a natural and necessary process to adjust your system, going from the old situation where hello was still this big and toxic part of your life, or at least in our hands, and grief brings you to the new situation where your system is adjust to not having a low anymore and be totally fine with that. After the grief, after the limerence, you don't care about hello anymore. Now, since your system thinks hello is a very important attachment figure, which they're not, by the way, it will not let you detach without a fight. It means you will have to endure. Endure everything you feel and everything you think. The doubts, the wanting more or better closure, the just, maybe I can just, make this better or make the pain go away with just one little message. The loyalty, the feeling sorry for them for walking away. The manipulation of limerence, who is whispering in your ear to contact them again. That's the addiction, of course. You will have to endure, 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 and keep going. Now, the only thing that helps to deal with difficult emotions and pain are healthy coping skills. But what do we exactly mean with the phrase or the words healthy coping skills? Healthy coping skills means how you deal with painful emotions. And examples of healthy coping skills are journaling is a healthy coping skill, talking to a friend, crying to let the stress out, expressing your feelings are healthy coping skills, being in nature, meditation, sports, distract yourself, take walks, practice self-compassion, very important, or call someone when you feel like you cannot take the pain anymore. Those are examples of healthy coping skills, so how we deal with emotions. Now, none of them, and I mean none of them, will make the pain of the grief go away. They're not supposed to, they cannot. But at least we don't damage ourselves in our grief process. In the grief towards a better place. I'm sure we can also find some examples of unhealthy coping where we drink a bottle of vodka every day, we bottle up everything, we don't express ourselves, we create new addictions, we ignore the fact that we are in grief, we do self-harm, we date too soon, and we hurt other people by dating too soon, numbing yourself too much, or do anything that blocks your feelings. And also putting Elo's house on fire is not the example of a healthy coping skill. It is logical that all my clients want to know, how do I stop the pain? We're human, we don't like pain. How do I stop the constant missing and the 24/7 thinking and the obsessing and the longing in the grief? What can I do? Well, you can't do anything to stop it from one moment to the other, because your brain and your body need time and space away from the source of your addiction in order to be able to adjust. And I also understand that people try antidepressants, and if it helps, it helps. But in my experience, antidepressants don't really help that much in limerence grief, because grief will not be suppressed. Grief will be felt. Suicidal thoughts are normal in grief. But if you feel like you really have no control anymore over suicidal thoughts, please contact a professional. But do know that having suicidal thoughts is not the same as being suicidal. Wanting the pain to end is normal. Like I said, we humans are programmed to not want to feel pain. Now, I've made tons of videos about grief and what to expect, and that it actually takes longer, and that it can even peak after 5 months, and that everything you think and feel is normal. Your only task is not to seek contact. And if you do, no harm done. We try again. We call it a slip up. We don't call it a relapse. And even though my first slip up lasted 2 years, I did it again. And that time I pushed through. Every day I made the decision. I want to be happy. Make 1 or 2 goals for yourself. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing the hard work getting out of limerence? Because ending things with someone that you love is one of the hardest things that you will probably ever do. So endure everything that is happening to you, all your emotions, all your regrets, your shame, your doubts, your low self-esteem. It's all part of grief. It's all part of the game. It actually means it's working. It means you are healing. It means you are detaching. It means you're going to be in a better place. The worse you feel, the more it means that you are in full detachment, which is good. Now, Mother Nature doesn't like us to detach, so she will use every trick in her book for you to go seek this person again, giving you a lot of self-blame and a lot of shame around the contact with the other, for example. And she hopes, Mother Nature hopes, that by feeling a lot of shame, you will seek contact again in order to set things right and restore the contact. Now, evolutionary, that has a lot of benefits to restore the contact with somebody that we are attached to. But dealing with limerence, it's not so handy. You will have to outsmart Mother Nature and endure. I will not contact them today. Maybe one day, who knows, but not today. And that's how you push it forward until one day you think, I really don't care anymore at all what this person thinks of me, or how things ended, and what they're doing, and with who. I have so many better things to do now. Now, the grief period is painful. It's also very profound, and sometimes I call it fertile soil. Here you can have a look at what can be done. Here you can have a look at yourself and describe how you want to live the rest of your life. How you can reshape your values. Decide who and how you want your life to be in your amazing future. Here we can work with the iron while it's hot. Here we can clean up our life, take on new projects, design our life. Here we can use personal leadership in planting the seeds and harvesting the happiness in the near future. And I know that this contradicts with the grayness and the boredom and the lack of dopamine and the hopelessness that you also feel in grief. And grief is by itself one big experience of contradictions. But educate yourself about grief and attachment, and you will not only have bad days, you will also have days where you will have energy. Again, everything you feel and think is normal. There is unfortunately no quick fix. Thinking about the bad traits of allow might create a little bit of awareness, but it will not make you less sad and longing. That just needs time. What I did during my years of grief is I meditated a lot, and again, nothing of this at the time made me feel better. But here I am, healthy and happy. So probably everything I did at that time might have helped or probably helped to come where I am now. But what I did was turn every stone. I talked about my grandma. I talked about things that I didn't even know that were there. I cried like a maniac for months. I started to paint. I started a plant nursery. I started a YouTube channel. I educated myself a lot about the subject of grief. I actively practice self-compassion. I changed my values. I decided to live in full integrity, and I also decided to help others. I leaned on my friends, particularly on one friend. I did not date for a long time and I journaled a lot. Reminding myself to never, ever let anyone read my journal because I think I will be locked away for a while. But okay, I'm not saying and you need or should do all these things, but my grief was so big, it probably went back generations. I had to do things. And it paid off. Now, even if you would not do any of these things and just let the grief be there, it will change you for the better. Now, the last part in how to deal with limerence is about prevention. And again, I've made a lot of videos on this. The videos where I dive deeper into the subject that I will now. But let's have a look on how to address this, how to prevent limerence. First of all, you educate yourself about limerence because awareness creates choice and choice gives you power. And the phrase, the power of choice, is not my phrase, unfortunately. It comes from Alan Robarge, and he is my attachment hero here on YouTube. He's also a relationship educator. But take the time to process. Don't jump into anything new just because you want to not feel the pain anymore or you want a distraction. Calm down first. Don't date immediately after limerence. Process things. Live on your own for a while. Sit with yourself. After we sit with ourselves and all our feelings, you might want to date again. So then we need to prevent limerence. First of all, date carefully, meaning avoid mismatches and obstacles. For example, don't date long distance when you are a potential limerent, because with long distance there are too many intermittent rewards which create addictions. Don't date someone who is already in a relationship, because in that way you cannot form a safe pair. Another tip, keep people in boxes, meaning that the dentist does your teeth and your teacher teaches you, meaning you don't flirt with your dentist and you actually don't text your teacher a wink emoji at 11 at night. You date with dating partners and you make love with dating partners, and you don't make love with your neighbor or your neighbor's cousin who also happens to be married. Letting your values guide you through life is a huge protection against limerence. Do as you say, and saying what you do is so important. No more playing with fire. Another huge protection is being proactive, and therefore know what you want before you start to look for a partner. If you actually want a relationship, state that to yourself and know that in that case, you should not settle for a situationship. If you want to be someone's partner or girlfriend or boyfriend, you should not accept being someone's half-assed fake mistress. But first of all, decide what you want. Know yourself, your needs and your vulnerabilities. Protect yourself. Do take red flags serious this time, which is very important. And admit that sometimes we just fall for the wrong person and we fall in love with a person who does not meet our needs, and then we need to walk away. Ending things is also a healthy coping skill if we are miserable, rather sooner than later. And if you know that you can walk away and survive from someone who doesn't make you happy, we have little to worry about if we start to date again. Hey, I can always walk away. I did it before. Keeping people in boxes. Don't date when there are obstacles and mismatches, and knowing that you can walk away from someone if that person doesn't meet your needs is so important. Now, I hope that this video gave you some insights in how to end limerence. There is no quick fix. Don't endure the limerence. Do decide to end things, go through the grief, and build a happier life. If you want my help in this process, I work with people in a limerent episode, and please contact me. My email address is in the description below. And for now, I want to thank you so much for watching this whole long video, and I hope to see you in another one. Bye.